How many lawyers does it take to sign a non-disclosure agreement? Well, actually, the right question to ask today is why is it important what's in a non-disclosure agreement? Because often people consider that to just be a standard form agreement that you have to sign to get into conversation with someone about a merger and acquisition transaction. I'm joined here today by my colleague and friend, Stephanie Hostler, who's an expert in M&A and particularly on NDAs. And Steph, I'd love to get your take on what can be buried inside a non-disclosure agreement that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, hi, Bob. It's so great to talk to you about this issue because I do think many times people enter into non-disclosure agreements, which really just sign them without really paying attention to what's in there. So the first point that I wanted to raise is just the purpose of the agreement in terms of the purpose of why you're using the information. So there's been recent case law around having the purpose well defined in your non-disclosure agreement. And if you're the person using the information, getting access to the information, you have to make sure that you're staying within that purpose, the purpose of the agreement. And if you're the person that's disclosing the information, you want to make sure that the purpose is defined as narrowly as possible so that it satisfies the purpose of the agreement. Secondly, you really want to look at the terms of the of when you can and can't use that information. Are you allowed to disclose it to representatives, to your representatives? And are they bound by the terms of that non-disclosure agreement? Because if your investment banker gets picked up in that non-disclosure agreement, you want to make sure that that banker is not violating that agreement, and that you have some protections around that, some safeguards around it, so that you don't get caught in a breach because of a foot fault by one of your representatives. And then finally, you really want to look at, a lot of times parties try and throw in, and I know, Bob, you've had this experience as well, where they try and throw in other provisions that are really not non-disclosure provisions, such as standstill obligations. So for instance, if you have a non-disclosure agreement with a public company where you're the entity receiving the information and the disclosing party is the public company, sometimes people will try and throw in an agreement that you won't acquire shares in the public company or take certain actions with respect to the public company. So you want to make sure you keep your eyes open and read the entire agreement. Is there a non-solicitation provision that applies to your company? Is there a standstill agreement that applies to your company? And again, these go beyond the scope of a non-disclosure agreement, but a lot of times you find it in there.
That's great. Thanks, Stephanie. So I think the key takeaways are a non-disclosure agreement is a contract, and you've got to pay attention to all of the provisions of that contract because you will in fact be bound by them. And it's always good to consult with your attorney before entering into one of those agreements.